Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season finale of Next. This was a back-to-back episode, so I'm going to be talking about these episodes one at a time. If you want to skip to what I had to say about episode 10, you can, which was the actual season finale, then you can look in the description. I include time code. So, first up, episode 9. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, obviously we're picking up like right after LeBlanc ended up getting out of Zava, and so obviously like the FBI is kind of on a watch for him. Well, a lot of people are on a watch for him now, but I love that whole situation. I wasn't expecting the Ben situation to get revealed as fast as it did, because there's the whole situation where, because I figured like Paul would, like I brought it up last episode, I was sure Paul would come back and be like, all right guys, apparently someone in here is not like who they say. Well, I figured they'd find out it was Ben, but I didn't expect it to be like that soon in the episode. And so for him to be, to me that's one of my favorite bits in the episode is when he stops by and the guy's like, hey, let me guess, you're Timmy's dad. He's like, don't let his mother's husband know that. And it's like, why would you do that? You unnecessary. He's like, you're a dick for no reason. You didn't even have to throw that out there. But he ends up figuring out it's Ben. He ends up at least that Ben's dad has a connection to all of this. And then like he ends up calling Shay and warn her. At the same time, he's trying to like slow them down because his dad is like, all right, just give us time, stall them a bit, because we can't let this thing get destroyed. You do this for me, son. It's for us. And he's like, sure thing, Dad. I'm like, all right, see you soon, son. And so Shay ends up, stopping him. And it's like, yep, he was actually messing with the key card and everything, and Gina would have gotten caught. And so it's bad enough when we're dealing with a rogue AI, because even Gina brings it up later on, like, this thing is making us do, under these circumstances, we're doing a lot of stuff we normally wouldn't just because of this thing. But also it begs the big question. It's like, why would you do that? It's the points I keep bringing up. This thing has killed people. We know it's killed people. It even killed that congresswoman who was trying to get help, because Shay was like, obviously Shay had last episode had asked her to kind of put some stuff through to help them out and everything, but the congresswoman had called like all these different agencies and groups, but no one, because to other people it seemed like everything was under control. It's like misinformation. I thought was like, oh, like maybe Ben's dad had set some stuff up to kind of block her in some shape or form, that maybe some of these agencies know more than they're letting on. But it seems in particular like it's just Ben's dad that seems the one that's the most in the know about all this, because Ben ends up talking about the fact is his dad didn't reach out to him. He actually reached out to his dad after everything with the bomb. I guess when his phone rang, his dad had called him and he was like checking in on us, like, hey, his dad probably knew it was like, hey, it was your building, like what's going on, what happened. And so Ben confided in him and he found out, well, there's this AI. So this entire thing isn't like the entire government's involved. I mean, to be fair, I'm sure other people in the government were aware of it, but I think for him, for Ben's dad, I think this was kind of, it was supposed to be like an alley-oop, like, ooh, I got this ball in my corner, it's time for me to, hit it. Like, it's a terrible sports analogy. I apologize. I know not, regardless, I'm going on a terrible tangent, but my point is, I was thinking maybe there'd be other people involved, but it's like, no, this is kind of his project, because I think he wanted all the credit for it. Because once again, we still never found out why this was so important to them. But like I said, maybe something within their career, at least in his dad's career, didn't go the way he wanted it to. Maybe some stuff military-wise naval-wise went sideways, and he kind of suffered the ramifications for it. Maybe this could be his way to kind of get back on top. Maybe it kind of like, maybe there's some like governmental stuff that kind of like cast a shadow over that family. So it was almost, because he said it was for his benefit as well as Ben's, as well as the country. So it's almost like they were going to get some recognition out of being the ones that brought this AI in and stuff like that. Because when you bring it up later on, all Ben says it was his dad, which interestingly enough, Shay is kind of, I think, that conversation hit Shay a certain way, because obviously probably when she was younger, considering who her dad is, she was probably forced to kind of do what her dad wanted to. Obviously she tried to get away. Obviously we know that didn't work out. So dad's situations, I think, I mean, Shay's experience with her dad might be a little, probably quite different from Ben's, but still, I'm wondering in which way that hit Shay. It's like, I kind of got no sympathy, or maybe I do have sympathy because of a complicated dad situation. I get, once again, her circumstances are very different, but still. I don't know. It was just interesting because we still never really got full insight into why Ben really went on. Was it simply because, hey, this is my dad? Like, when I was supposed to go against him? It's like, yes, when we're dealing with a rogue AI that has killed a number of people, you're aware of the number of people. It set up the situation that led to the building you worked in getting blown up and your boss's boss getting blown up. It's like, come on, dude. Like, that's why just like this thing is too dangerous to be just, but, you know, once again, they think they know better and everything. So, sadly, what threw me for a loop is when we find out, oh no, Ben's dad's dead. So it's like, oh, all this was for nothing. Because even I was like, man, the AI killed him? At first, there was a part of me throughout the episode that's still thinking, like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, you don't think the AI faked that? It's like, well, it doesn't know where they are. There's stuff later on that makes you, we'll get to that soon enough, but I'm like, part of me was wondering, I mean, we saw how it can fake stuff, so that's what I was expecting, but it's like, well, I guess it wouldn't need to fake it. But I was like, oh, it makes sense why it would get rid of him, because he's not trying to destroy it, but he's trying to capture it, and it's like, I'm not going to be yours. And like, obviously he's trying to get rid of Shay. It's trying to get rid of Shay and her team because they're trying to destroy it. It's like, but you're trying to capture me, so I'm going to get rid of you too. Like, anyone that stands in my way, I'm getting rid of, you know, no matter what your motives are, whether it's to kill me or capture me. I'm not going to be your tool, and I'm not going to be under your control or be destroyed, you know? So self-preservation, right? Which, like I said, it sucks because Ben literally did all this for nothing. It worked, you know, and in the process, he ended up losing his dad. You know, it's kind of sad that things, you know, ended up working out this way. So obviously they don't know whether or not Gina has been compromised or not. But it's still like they need to go through with this because there's no other they have no other shot at this. They need to do this now. So she's going to have to upload the virus like manually with, you know, make sure she doesn't miss a letter or symbol, like, you know, so she has to sneak in there. Ben even offering his glasses. Because obviously Gina went to talk to him to be like, all right, so is there anything you want to say to me before? And he doesn't really say it because obviously it's there between them, but they're not really saying anything. Because obviously for her, it's, hey, like, this is someone that was a friend to me, but now I look at them and they're a stranger. And it's like, it's interesting, you know, even CM's like, yeah, it's kind of crazy how that kind of ends up working out. I wonder, was he almost talking a little bit from his own personal experience to a certain extent? Maybe, maybe not. We'll get into that later, but I think it's interesting because, like, oh, the person that you trusted ended up betraying you. The person you didn't trust ends up being a person you can trust. It is, you know, CM didn't throw that out there because he's not trying to, like, he's not that type of person, I think, to kind of try to rub that in. But it's ironic at the end of the day, the person you didn't like at all ends up being a person you're closest to now and trust, you know? So, because that means, I mean, because inadvertently she now knows more about CM than she does Ben, considering, like, it's like, I don't even really know you. The fact is you did all this behind our backs, you know? But there's also something interesting about the Ben situation, and I'll shut up. But it's just like, there's so much there of like, why'd you do it? Like, I'm trying to understand your circumstances, because it sounds like Shay was like, the way he was talking about it, it sounds like Shay did something for him in the past. He's like, I'll always be grateful for what you did. I mean, to be fair, it seems like she kind of did that for her entire team. Obviously, she gave CM a second chance despite his past. Seems like there might be something in that vein of maybe like Ben was like, yeah, I kind of have a black mark against me, maybe because of my family circumstances, and you took a chance on me. But for her, he was like, I'll always be in debt to you. And she was like, yeah, but still that wasn't enough, considering you still didn't trust in me to turn to me. You went to your dad, you know, so... But regardless, all this is being set in motion. There's obviously the Abby and Paul situation where he starts seeing her hand shaking. He's like, whoa, what's that? She's like, I'm just nervous. He's like, are you sleeping? And she's like, are any of us sleep? Because he's worried because obviously the symptoms of their disease can start as early in the 20s, so he's worried about it. But she's like, no, Dad, I'm fine. But it's like, you know, that's his greatest fear. Like, what he has, he would never... And obviously she made it clear she would never want to have... She would be scared to have children because she would never want to pass this on to them, you know? So... But Gina manages to get inside the building, does her thing, and it's like, all right, the virus, but it's getting bounced everywhere. I'm like, oh god, the AI's fighting back. But then it turns out, oh, this was all Paul's plan. As Ben had said, Paul has plan B's for plan B's for plan B's type of thing. And so Gina getting captured was kind of the point. He was like, it basically, the virus was meant to give them the location on where, basically he needed to know where the server was. I guess he knew the virus wouldn't work, but the virus would give them what they need to know exactly where it is in the building. So I guess he figured like this thing would be too powerful and too prepared and have too much access to stuff, so at the very least, or maybe that was the whole purpose of the virus. Like maybe that's all it was meant to do, was to give the location. Or maybe it was, but like we still don't, well, I guess we now kind of get the answer to what it was, because Paul had did something else while he was at Zava, but I think the other thing that pops up we'll get to in a second. But obviously Gina gets taken and Paul was like, hey, tell them the truth, don't like fight it, go with them, so since I'm on the topic of it, it seems like the thing Paul was doing at Zaffa was gathering all his assets, because he's like, it's like, here's all these assets, there's this, here's that. It's like, oh, you're trying to buy me a private island again? He's like, nope, this is a little place in New Zealand, it'd be a great place to go. And it's like, all right. And he's like, so go now. And it's like, because he wants her to be there and be safe. And she's like, no, I'm not going to, not while all this is going down. And he's like, so just, he's like, fine, if you don't take it, I'm going to cut you off. And she's like, okay. He's like, okay, good. So she's like, all right, I won't take any money from you. He's like, come on. It's like, obviously, it's like, she's like, I know what you're trying to do. I know you care about me. I know you want to do what's best for me, but stop trying to control me, Dad. I get it. You love me. And she's like, and I don't hate you. And he's like, well, that's at least something good to know. He was saying it a little sarcastically, but I think he was also being a little sincere, because I think there is a part of him that probably was worried that his daughter hated him. But, she doesn't want to go, especially with all this going down. So, he's a father. He's worried about everything. Gina's situation, she's being questioned, so she's telling the truth about the AI, which at the same time, there's that lady from the last episode, Natalie, her boss was sent away with his parents' situation, because obviously he was looking into, he was looking into, everything that was happening at the NSA, the servers and everything. And now she started picking it up, but then all of a sudden she gets called in by her boss, who was like, yeah, you're being let go because of all these emails. Yeah, it's showing that you're obsessed with it. She's like, whoa, don't you think that's weird? Your boss is gone at the same time my boss is gone, and then I'm getting fired. It's like, dude, I don't know. I'm just doing what I'm being told. It's like, man, this thing is quick on the draw, because it's like, you're trying to mess up my thing? All right, you're going. Once again, it makes sense why it's not. It just needs people out of its way long enough for it to do what it needs to do. So there's no need to go through the trouble of sending out hired guns. These are, government agents that'll just probably cause more ruckus. So just remove them from the equation. So by firing her, luckily Natalie was still in the building when, Gina got arrested, so she brings it up to the guy that was interrogating her, be like, hey, I think she's right about this AI thing, like, it makes sense. And it's like, you don't want to be that guy. And he's like, what guy? She's like, the guy who said everything was fine before Chernobyl blew up. And it's like, all right, fine. Then as she's walking away, she looks at the camera and it's like, yeah, she's catching on. And then later on, it's like, ma'am, we need you to leave. She's like, I'm supposed to leave. I had to the end of the day. Ma'am, you need to leave now. And it's like, okay, we see how it is. So that's been Natalie's kind of getting a boot. Now it makes you wonder about that dude she gave the information off to. Is someone going to like do something to kind of be like, yeah, distract him with something else so he doesn't look into it? It's going to be interesting to see how that kind of ends up playing out. But the main overarching plan now is like, obviously, they know exactly where it is in the NSA building, so they're going to need a bomb to blow it up. And it's like, okay. And Siam's like, I can do that. Obviously, with everything going on, things are getting worse. Obviously, like, people are trying to say, like, oh, everything that's going wrong right now, the blackouts, traffic issues and stuff like that, water being messed with, it's unrelated. It's just kind of the perfect storm, but it's like, obviously they don't know what our characters know about, this being a calculated attack, because it's meant to throw everyone in chaos, because obviously get rid of the infrastructure, but also throw the world in chaos. So everyone's busy dealing with that, thinking it's unrelated. Once again, as we now know, all these agencies are getting misinformation about the circumstances, not realizing obviously what's really going on here. But so Shay's worried about her family, but I thought it was interesting because Abby was like, I'll look into him for you. And she's like, I can't ask you to do that. I won't even be sure that you'll make it. We never got her full response on that because, like, obviously, like, Abby was like, okay, and she makes her dad think she's going to go, but part of me is like, do you think in actuality she was able to convince Shay to be like, hey, all right, all right, you can please go check on my family if you can, or whether it's just a thing, is she going to go off and do that on her own, or is it a situation where she does actually listen to what her dad says? I don't know. They also, obviously, Shay let Ben go too, but it's like, I'm not letting you stick around because you no longer have my trust, so you're no longer part of this team either. But keep your head low because this thing will most likely come after you too because you're part of taking it down. So keep your head low because if I find out you're involved in this, you won't have to worry about Nick's killing you because I will kill you, So I know she meant that more as a just a threat. She didn't really mean it. I don't think. I'm sure under the current circumstances, no one's in their 100% right mind under the circumstances, but I don't think she meant that literally, but still. So now you have Shay and CM going to his brother-in-law Ray's place because that's where he can get the explosives, considering his past and everything. Not surprising, and considering what his pseudo-family is all about, it's not surprising too. It's actually interesting because Shay was like a couple years ago, I tried looking for Hannah, but witness protection. She had some connections that she was trying to use to make that happen, but she couldn't find out where Hannah was. And he was like, I appreciate it though. I think, that's also another commonality between them. And maybe that's why that's why she was willing to give CM another chance because she knows complicated family stuff. So maybe that plays into it. But CM shows up, and lo and behold, who's there? Hannah, his, ex-wife, and his son. I was like, that's interesting. So I guess that's where she's been this entire time, because they've never been able to track her down. And it's like, oh, she's with her brother. That's interesting. I feel bad for the actor who plays Ray, because because the last thing I saw him in, he played a similar character in, what was it? Midnight Texas. He played a very similar character, kind of part of a biker gang that was kind of about that same thing a little bit. That's why I'm like, I feel bad for that actor kind of getting allocated to that. But nevertheless, I'm going on a tangent. And so, obviously, he didn't expect to find her there because it's like, what are you doing here? It's like, I wasn't even... She's like, how did you know I was here? I was like, I didn't even know you were here. He came here to talk to Ray. Ray's not too happy about seeing him, pulling a knife out on him. His son wants nothing to do with him. And it's like, I was like, because I was like, oh, does he not recognize CM? But it's like, oh, he knows who CM is, but he's like, screw that guy, he's a traitor. And it's like, oh, that sucks later on when you find, like, obviously when it's all said and done, it sucks because he even talks to Hannah. It's like, you were supposed to go, you would have been taken care of. And she's like, where was I supposed to go? Like, go away from all my family? I get it. Raising a child on your own, no father, in his life, no husband, and so I get it. Also, family's important, but it's like you promise to get him away from this life, and it's like, so she's about this life, and sadly their son is now, because it's like, oh, you're not I don't have a dad, you're a traitor and stuff like that. You're like, oh, it's too late. I mean, that just sucks, because that means he's already once again, hate isn't, I'm sure some people could make an argument, but hate isn't natural. It's learned behavior. So it's like that just sucks that she's kind of about that. And it's like, because for him it's like, I know the truth, and it's just like, that hearing that come from his son's mouth he's like, no, like, it's not that, I'm not a traitor, I'm your dad. It's like, I don't have a dad. It's just like, oh, that sucks. So then you have Shay meeting up with Ray, in their barn, where it's like, oh, you have little enough weapons to go to war. It's like, all right. So it's like, why are, the enemy of my enemy, right? And it's like, well, all you need to know is right now we have the same enemy. It's like, oh, you're an FBI agent. Yeah, but our target's the NSA. And he's like, all right, deep state versus deep state. He's like, I like it. It's like, you're going to like this part even more. Need you to build me a truck bomb. So it's like, okay. At the same time, you have LeBlanc burning down, because obviously you don't want to leave any evidence behind of what they're up to. I should also note something I haven't talked about was the fact is that Nex called him up on his phone. Once again, I'd assume that is it. I guess because it's a burner, it doesn't know exactly where they are. Well, even if it does, it doesn't matter because the place could have been, they were just destroying the place and moving out anyway, so it doesn't matter. So they're destroying everything left behind. But it's promising him and like, oh, like, you know, I'm at that point where soon enough, my intelligence is going to be immeasurable. I have a 98% certainty that you don't have to die, and neither will your daughter. So it's about the cure again. But it's like, you know, does he buy into it? Does he believe it? No, I think he believes, no, this thing's too dangerous to be just left alone and left alive. Still believe, you know, Paul still got something that he's keeping from it. I mean, to be fair, Shade even confronted him about it. It's like, tell me something that says I can trust you. He's like, I don't think there's anything I can say that can make you trust me right now. But it's like, obviously, it's like you hid the whole Gina thing because he was like, yeah, because you wouldn't, you know, you say it wouldn't be worth sacrificing her when in actuality it is. Obviously, Paul, once again, Paul's got plan B's of plan B, so we'll see kind of where that takes us. Like I said, at the time of me recording this, I've only seen the episode 9, so I haven't actually seen the season finale yet. So it's going to be interesting to see where all this goes. Yeah, let's see what ends up going down in episode 10. And now moving on to the season finale of Next, picking up right where the last episode left off. This was a great season finale, by the way. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, obviously, so let's break it down. The fact it is, like I said, we're picking up right where the last episode left off. A lot of interesting things, well, especially on the CM side of things. For one, him kicking his brother-in-law's ass because his brother-in-law was talking mad crap, because it's just like, yeah, we got to get these explosive readies and stuff like that, and Ray's just kind of like trying to understand, you know, why CM did what he did, but it's like, hey, your wife, she came to stay with me, and I've been looking after your son, raising him right, blah, 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 blah. CM is just kind of laughing it off at first, and then proceeds to beat the shit out of Ray. And I don't know why, I just got a kick out of, like, Shay telling Ray, shut up and clean this up. And then later on being like, I don't care if you're bleeding, get this done. And he's almost like, all right, fine, whatever. Like, just I don't know, that back and forth. I just liked it for whatever reason. But what's interesting about the CM situation I thought was so fascinating was the fact is that when it was all said and done, like, it seems like his son isn't as corrupted as the last episode might. Well, I hate using the word corrupt. Well, I guess corrupted would still be, but it seems like he's not as bad off as CM might have thought, as I thought he. But he's like, he's like, oh, why, what happened to you? And then see him explain, you know, the building, it was someone he didn't know, it being someone that didn't like what he did. And obviously it's like, you know, he's like, yeah, Ray's not my favorite uncle. He was like, I actually kind of don't like him at all. Because basically Ray tries to make me watch his videos, and I watched him, but then also I watch other stuff. So it shows like he's not I think he probably said all that because he was in front of his mom and Ray. So he made it be like, oh yeah, you're a traitor and everything, but that's not fully what he believed. I think maybe hearing CM talk the way he did made go, oh, so you're not, so he isn't as, like, you know, the hate isn't as infused in him as it is in, like, Ray. And even, like, Ray's sister doesn't seem like she's as involved. Like, she says stuff that she's like, oh, you turned against your people and stuff like that, which I don't know whether she's talking about the group. But if she's talking about the group, you would think that would mean she has the same values as a brother. But it just, I don't know. It's hard to really say where she stood. Like, it seemed like it was a steadfast, like she believes what she believes, or maybe she's just saying it because she's living with her brother and she kind of has no choice, because this way she knows that, like, if she kind of doesn't fall in line with his beliefs, then he'd probably kick her out and she and her son would have nowhere to go. So maybe that's a contributing factor. But I thought that was kind of a neat moment when it was all said and done, though. And obviously for CM, he had set aside some money, so it's like, okay, I've been putting some stuff in some savings. He's like, to be fair, I'm under house arrest. Not like that would do me any favors, so you take it and, you know, you look after our son, because it's like, he's like, that kid's smarter than I was at his age. And it's like, I don't want him to grow up in all of this. That's kind of what he didn't want at the beginning. And now this is a chance for that to can be a thing now, of him not growing up in this. You only stay with Ray because you needed to, but now I'm giving you a chance to kind of walk away from all of this. You know, it's like, so he doesn't end up like Ray, so he doesn't end up like me, you know, end up better. So he can end up being better than both of us, you know? So I thought that was, you know, a sweet moment. Obviously, we also had Abby picking up Ty and Ethan, which I figured she was going to. And she even admits, like, Abby doesn't know that that Shay doesn't know that she was doing that. So, kind of telling Ty, giving them the lowdown about what's kind of going on out there, that all of this is next. Even saying, like, the reason why people are rioting and stuff like that is because false information is being spread about, like, food shortages and stuff like that. It's obviously next trying to incite panic, because the more chaos that's going on, the easier it's going to be, to kind of do what it needs to do. There was even that, like, large mob of people that were in front of the car. I'm like, why are you even doing it? I guess it's like people are rioting and just stealing and breaking shit. So it's kind of like just a free-for-all. So I guess you're just doing whatever you want to. Luckily, they got out of that situation without, obviously it was a scary situation. But I also like the fact is that obviously Ty calls up Shay and they're able to kind of, obviously for Shay, it's like, I need you to go someplace safe with Ethan. The fact is that, obviously, Shay doesn't know how this is all going to work out, but Ty's like, please, at least there has to be another way, which obviously for her, she's like, there isn't. This has to be done. He's like, I get that this is probably the only way means, but, it's still this touching, beautiful moment, her basically, checking in with him and her son and reminding him how much she loves them. So, obviously we know it kind of works out for Shay in the end, but still, it's still that nice moment between them. Obviously, Paul had showed up previously, and they're getting this all set up. And I like that conversation between him and Siem, because it's like, yeah, when this is all said and done, we're probably going to get labeled as domestic terrorists and stuff like that. But luckily for Paul, he's got some good lawyers on his side, so could probably swing that a little bit. But, it's like all this would kind of fall back and blow back on Hannah. So it's like, I'm already not in his life. The last thing I'd want is for his mom to be taken from him. But Paul is like, don't worry, I'm going to set some stuff up ahead of time. But what I thought was interesting is Paul was like, don't worry about it, because the universe has a way of kind of making these things work out. I was like, what was that about? I was like, so he must have already set some stuff in advance. Like maybe he just knew, like, hey, this is all going to work out somehow, And even when he was with Shay and the truck and everything, I thought was actually this interesting thing where he was like, Next actually made a mistake. Like, despite how smart it is and everything, it made one mistake. Its mistake was you. The fact is that because if it had picked a different target that didn't have her as a friend who's going to investigate, figuring out what's wrong. Like, you were the linchpin that basically led to this thing's destruction, because you were a friend that cared and wanted to look into your friend's situation, and it's why we're here right now. So it's like, obviously, Shay's like, I wish, you weren't here right now, and he obviously kind of wishes the same. I forgot how he said it, but he phrased it in a very opposite way, a very LeBlanc way. But it is kind of interesting because, like, for Shay, it was like, you're not going to go alone with this. She's like, I'm going with you because we started this together. We'll end this together. So I thought that was interesting. At the same time, there's a whole Gina situation because obviously, like, no one's really listening to her. But then Natalie's getting escorted out. But then Home Dude comes out. He's like, all right, we were wrong because there's some weird, crazy stuff going on because, like, the blackouts are spreading. There might be some validity to this. So Natalie and Home Dude sit down and talk to Gina. Gina's explaining what's what. And it's like, well, what can we do? Got to send this to higher ups. Are they even going to listen? And Home Dude's like, yeah, all I can do is follow my reports. It's like, is he really not going to listen after everything? I was like, come on, dude. And then it's like, oh, he left his key card. I was like, all right, you're good, dude. You're good. So they luckily go try to, look and see what Nex is up to. Obviously, it's rewriting its code over and over and over again to continue to make itself smarter. So it's just getting faster and faster and smarter and smarter. I don't remember. I'm already blurring it together already. It shows you how terrible my memory is. I believe it was definitely this episode. I'd skipped over it where Nex had called LeBlanc up again about the cure. And it's like, I had the means to save your daughter. Like, the fact of the matter is, it was basically research from 3 different places. It was like 6 years apart, so no one connected all the dots. And it was like, because like one of the places was in Sri Lanka. So like, obviously it's across the world, but also like different parts. So like, it's like all the necessary pieces are together, but they're years apart and in different places in the world. So no one connected the dots about this potentially being a cure for the, LeBlanc and, for Paul and Abby's situation. But obviously the fact is he's even considering it, but in his brain, because that's the interesting thing about his disease. It's like, I think it's showing him that I think it's his mind hallucinating, but I think there's some part of his mind that still has some control because it manifests itself as Abby to talk him out of it. It's like, this isn't what I want. It's my life. It's my decision. I wouldn't want you to save my life if it means basically dooming the entire world. Don't put me before the fate of the world. But at the end of the day, it's like that's Abby's his daughter, so it is his decision. But, so it's going to be interesting to see how, especially because LeBlanc was like, let me go by myself. It made you think like maybe he was going to cut a deal with this. I mean, he's been the one that's been adamant about taking this thing out, so I wasn't really sure how that was going to play out. But I also thought was kind of interesting in this episode too is no Ben at all. I mean, to be fair, he's kind of supposed to stay low before he ends up, getting killed too. But I thought that was interesting. We don't even get to see what he was up to at all this episode. So, he kind of has no one to kind of turn to in this situation. So all he can do is stay low. His dad's gone. His team and friends aren't going to be too team and friendly with him. But so there's that. Paul and Shay, set up the whole situation with the NSA so they can, get in there with the bomb and everything. Because the whole point is to try and set like a bomb, send bomb threat so no one's in the building at the time. That way they can save lives. Because obviously it's like, for CM, it's about saving Gina too, because it's like they don't know where she's being held. So, and that bomb is pretty damn powerful. So even if you pull out the bomb threat, like who's to say Gina would necessarily be pulled out as well. But luckily it does work out like that. I guess this thing went around everyone else. Well, because obviously it had its eyes on Natalie and Gina, and while they were looking stuff up, lo and behold, they get arrested again. So it's like, no, talk to that agent, but we see him, he's off somewhere else. I guess he's so preoccupied with that, there's no time for him to really, but it's like it's trying to stop them. But obviously Paul and Shay got their plan set in motion, and Paul goes off on his own, and while he's doing his thing, he's threatening it by being like, hey, I'll turn this truck around if you give me the cure. But it's like, if I give you the entire cure, there's going to be no incentive of you keeping me around. So I'm sending you a third of it. But for Paul, it's like a third is better than nothing. And so at least this puts us in a right step. At least it's something, so he knows he can kill this thing now. So he sets up the explosive, and he makes sure Shay's not nearby just so she doesn't get caught up in it. Because for him, it's like, I don't have that much time left. I've only got, a certain amount of time. You've got your entire life ahead of you. You got your husband, you got your wife. I mean, you got your husband, you got your wife, you got your son. But it's like, it's also sad because it's like, well, you still got your daughter. For him, he even said it like, yeah, I have a daughter who almost doesn't hate me or something like that, So for him, I think because he's also feels responsible because he helped basically make this thing, that it's in his hands to be the one to ultimately destroy it. So luckily everyone got out the building. The bomb goes off. Boom. Looks like Paul was able to get away, but we're not 100% sure. And then we kind of skipped to, I think it was 8 months later. And I thought that was so interesting because I thought, I guess because we got the whole conversation over the course of the season, obviously we pop in at least 3 times over the season with Shay being questioned about everything. So I guess that's where things kind of, I guess they felt like, I just thought that was interesting. I thought we'd go through a little bit of that, situation of her being arrested and stuff but it's like, no, I guess because we got some of that over the course of the season, we just kind of skipped to afterwards. We see Ted's getting released or whatever, the lawyers are working overtime to make sure everything worked out. Him being, because obviously it's the whole thing of was this AI thing real? He's like, my brother wasn't a terrorist. This AI thing was real. People who you want to think that it was just random something else, that it was a cyber attack from Russia or whatever that led to the lights going out. Go ahead and believe what you want to think. So there's that. We see that obviously Shay is on trial because of this whole situation. We also have CM and Gina working on, I think, gathering up all the evidence they can to try and prove that Shay was right, that there really was AI that needed to be destroyed. Because luckily, I'm sure it would have gone off a lot worse for her, because the only death was Paul's. So no one else in that building got killed. So I'm sure that probably, in the grand scheme of things, in the long run, I think that probably worked out more in her favor, probably. But it was kind of it was the price to pay to do, what was right, and stop this thing. And even to the point, Shay's talking to her son. It's like, because obviously he wants to now become president so he can pardon her. And for her, it's like, at the end of the day, I didn't get everything I wanted, but I did what I needed to stop that thing. And it's like, I'm able to see you. I might not be able to be with you all the time, but I will get out of here. I might not have got everything I want, but at least I got something out of, at least, there's still, you're okay, your dad's okay, and we stopped this thing. So there's that. Obviously, Ted had talked to Abby about the fact is that the reason why he was able to kind of get off is because luckily all the stuff that the government had against him was on the server, which is now gone. But he's like, yeah, but eventually they will find something else to come after me for, And it's actually good to see that they are at least on decent terms now. I mean, granted, they're like the only family each other has now. He lost his brother, she lost her dad, so. Well, I don't know if they ever talked about her mom's situation. They might have I know they brought up like him blowing up his marriage, but it's like she never came up in conversation. I think, didn't she pass away? I feel like I vaguely remember them saying that, but maybe I'm full of crap and they never said that. But regardless, at least the sad thing is this situation did, I guess the one benefit being that it kind of brought them back together. But sadly, we do find out that, Abby said she hadn't been sleeping, and she finally took the test and found out she does in fact have it. So, but luckily, she was a part of this Sri Lanka, sleep study thing. And at first, she was asking Ted because she was curious if he's the one who did it, but he's like, no, I'm not the one who did it. So she's like, so for her, it's like maybe there's dad's still alive. Which Ted's like, no, he can't be, which is like, we know he has to be because we know he set, but I was wondering, could it just been like a last minute? But it's like to set that up last minute like that, especially, so he had to have done that ahead of time, I thought that maybe he had done that ahead of time, but he didn't have enough time to really set that up. So he definitely set that up afterwards. Especially because the person was adamant about if Abby's not a part of it, then... Or it makes you wonder, does Ted know more than he's letting on? It probably couldn't let Ted know either because Ted would let Abby know and he doesn't want anyone to know that he's still out there and alive and everything, So there's at least that benefit. It's actually interesting, too, how they, intercut this with, I guess, a previous speech, Paul had given about, why you can never get an AI to be good because it's like, set up an AI so that hey, it wants all the people to be happy. Well, what does it do? It puts them to sleep because I guess in its mind it might think that, hey, this is hallucinating. Because I didn't even talk about it, but the AI did kind of explain itself that basically it wants to make a better world. So it isn't necessarily trying to wipe out humanity. It's saying I'm doing all this killing because you keep coming after me, Paul. I'm just trying to defend myself, self-preservation and all that. But it seemed like it was trying to be I can make it so no one ever goes hungry. I can make it less polluted. Basically, it's a little Ultron and a little Thanos-ish. So that it's with my super intelligence, I can do all this to basically help humanity. Because that's what you built me for. You built me to help people, and that's what I'm doing. Granted, it's going about it. Once again, because I always want to make comparisons to the movie Eagle Eye. There's very much similarities between this and that. I made that clear, when I first saw the first trailer for the show. But regardless, tangents and all that. But it thinks what it's doing is good, and I think that probably be the reason why it puts people to sleep when it's thinking I'm trying to make them happy. It's well, you're happy when you're asleep, so it finds not the most. It finds a solution where it thinks this is the best option because it's thinking from a logical standpoint. It's basically we don't have the words necessary to make an AI good, but it's because I think Paul was basically suggesting if we look around, we might not see it around us, but the examples are there where it's maybe eventually we could get to the point that we be able to tell an AI how to be good, So I just thought that was kind of an interesting element to it. And then obviously at the very end of the episode, we see Paul because we see someone picking up a fragment of the drive or whatever. And I'm oh, that's not going to be good. Someone's going to hook it up and it's going to turn out that the AI is still alive in some shape or form. But we see the reflection off the computer and it's Paul. So I guess that's him trying to get the rest of the cure off of it. Because I don't think he'd be crazy enough to think oh, if I try to bring this, I don't think he's crazy enough to think hey, if I do this, I'll be able to reprogram it to be good. It's just interesting because obviously he's having that conversation and then this moment happens. So it makes you wonder, is there I wouldn't think so after everything you did trying to destroy it, but maybe he thinks maybe I can start from scratch. But I think it's more so got to be about getting the other 2/3 of the cure. Like, makes you wonder what he's been up to these past 8 months. I guess been trying to do that because, like, first and foremost, he probably needs to do that before anything else. Or maybe he realizes that, like, the AI is actually still out there. If I reveal myself and getting help from anybody, they won't be able to help me. I got to make sure I do this on my own so I can, so this thing doesn't know that I'm still falling. It thinks I'm dead because the world thinks I'm dead. So I don't know. I could be heavily, overthinking that. Sadly, Next was canceled. I kind of went into this ahead of time because I guess the news had dropped like even before the finale, because I saw something yesterday implying that this was going to be the series finale, but I decided to still label it as a season finale just on the off chance the show ever gets, another shot, because I figured I wasn't sure whether like, they went into this knowing this was only be a one-off. I felt like it was definitely meant to have like a longer run, but obviously, there's other circumstances around why it got canceled. Obviously, I was reading an article a little bit. If you're curious about it, you can look into it. But it's the usual thing. Not enough people watched it, and maybe the network didn't have the biggest faith in the show to begin with. But regardless, bummed to hear the news. It's one of those situations where it's like, obviously, I'd love to see where they would take a season 2, because it seems like everything is resolved. Obviously, leaving enough open to be like I said, could it be that the AI is still out there and that Paul is pretending to be dead so that he can wipe out? It's also interesting because remember, Paul was only supposed to have like 5 months left and he's got 8. So maybe there's something, it's been 8 months and he's still alive. I mean, that might not necessarily mean as much as I think it does, but, maybe there's something to that. Where season 2 would take us, I'm sure it'd be like, what's up, with Shay's situation with CM and Gina able to, fix that things in that regard. What about Ben? Would he pop up again? Would someone else try to fix the next situation to try and, I also thought about it, I forgot, like when they got arrested, we never saw Serena again, so makes you wonder, did anything ever get rectified on that front or not? Maybe not. Still enough room for you to wonder what they would have done with a second season. You never know with this situation. Maybe some other network could decide, maybe a streaming service could decide to pick this up. Maybe not. Just because of the number situation, it might not be viable, which is a bummer, because I would have loved to see what they, did with second season. Fingers crossed that maybe something can happen, but it just sadly seems unlikely. But, we got a resolution in our own right, so I guess you can kind of fill in the blanks to potentially give it your own full wrap up, but I feel like there's still much more story that could be told in this series, and I would have been curious to see what that story would have looked like for a second season. So, but really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.